In the ashes of the rising sun.
I want you to step inside a memory from nearly 500 years ago.
Right, we're going way back for this one.
Yeah, way back. It's April 28, 1565. You're standing in the center of this coastal village, but there are no buildings left to look at. Everything has just been utterly consumed by fire.
It's just complete devastation.
Exactly. The air is thick, choking with that smell of charred wood and ash. The ground beneath your feet is physically radiating heat.
Wow.
And you're watching the villagers, slowly, silently walk through the smoldering ruins. They're dragging their hands through the gray soot of what used to be their homes.
Their entire livelihood's just gone.
Everything. But then a man stops. He falls to his knees. And in the center of this absolute destruction, he pulls something from the blackened debris.
Okay, what is it?
It's a simple wooden box. But unlike everything else in this village, the box is completely miraculously intact.
I mean, that defies physics, really.
Right. The wood isn't even singed.
When you consider the sheer thermal momentum of a village fire, it doesn't discriminate. It creates its own weather system of destruction.
Yeah, well, for a storm.
Exactly. For a wooden artifact to survive the epicenter of that heat is the kind of event that, it forces people to stop and reconsider what is actually possible.
And it's what is inside the box that changes everything. They pry open the lid, and resting perfectly undisturbed inside is a treasure completely untouched by the flames.
The image of the Santo Niño.
The Holy Child, yeah. Today on The Deep Dive, we are taking you into the heart of that exact impossible moment. We're looking at how a modern music channel, SPW Worship, managed to capture the psychological and spiritual weight of that 16th century survival story.
And how they translate it into an auditory experience for listeners today.
Exactly.
Because that event is historically known as Kaplag. It translates from the local dialect to finding or discovery. But to really understand the sources we were looking at, you have to realize that Kaplag isn't treated as just some lucky archaeological find.
It's way more than that.
Right. For the Philippines, this was the foundational spiritual encounter. It was this visceral demonstration of divine preservation that essentially defined the faith of an entire archipelago.
Which is huge.
It is. What SPW Worship is doing with their modern tracks isn't just recounting history. They are attempting to engineer the emotional journey of surviving a fire and, finding an indestructible truth in the ashes.
Okay, let's unpack this, because mapping a 500-year-old silent ash-covered miracle onto modern acoustics requires a very specific architecture.
It really does.
The first track we are analyzing from their catalog is called Found in the Fire, and the listener is immediately thrown from the cried devastation of 1565 right into the sweeping atmospheric acoustics of a modern stadium.
The sonic landscape there is incredibly deliberate. It doesn't start huge.
No, it's really sparse at first.
Yeah, the production leaves a lot of empty space at the beginning. You hear this isolated electric guitar, heavily delayed, layered over a very atmospheric, melancholic piano.
It's almost haunting.
Right, it's designed to mimic the disorientation of standing in the smoke.
But it doesn't stay in the smoke. The arrangement slowly builds. The drums come in, and they aren't playing like a complex pop beat. It's a heavy, driving rhythm.
Setting a very specific pace.
Exactly. A soaring electric guitar solo takes over, and the whole thing swells into this massive, cinematic rock anthem. And what really anchors it is the tempo. It sits at a very deliberate 75 beats per minute and a 44-time signature.
It feels like a massive congregational wave.
Totally.
And there is a physiological reason that specific tempo feels so heavy and monumental. 75 beats per minute is essentially the resting heart rate of a calm human being.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. When you sync heavy, driving rock instrumentation to a resting heart rate, it communicates an immense sense of majesty and unshakable procession.
That makes so much sense.
The music is telling your nervous system you are not panicking, you are not sprinting away from the flames, you are walking through the devastation with absolute deliberate purpose.
It actually makes me think of the engineering behind an airplane's black box.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, we call them black boxes, but they're those bright orange flight data recorders built to survive aviation disasters.
That is a brilliant mechanical parallel to what the Santo Niño represents here.
Right. Think about how a black box is constructed. It is wrapped in thick steel or titanium armor. It's surrounded by high-temperature insulation, and engineered specifically to withstand the ultimate disaster.
It's built for the worst-case scenario.
Exactly. It's designed to take the impact, endure the 2,000-degree heat, survive the extreme pressure, all so that it can deliver a crucial, unbreakable message from the wreckage.
Wow.
In the context of Found in the Fire, the Santo Niño is basically the spiritual flight recorder. It emerged from the wreckage to prove that the core message survived. And the lyrics echo this perfectly. The song says, "Not lost to time, not broken by the fire. You're the hope, our heart's one desire."
What's fascinating here is how the songwriters take that literal historical mechanism, the box surviving the fire, and they use it as a theological baseline for the nature of the divine.
Yeah, they really elevate it.
The lyrics, "Not lost to time, not broken by the fire," articulate this profound permanence. They are expressing that Jesus, represented by the Santo Niño, remains completely unchanged regardless of the passing eras or the intense crises that surround the listener.
It's a constant.
Metaphorically, the fires of our modern lives, whether that is intense global anxiety, economic collapse, or personal tragedy, they cannot consume the spiritual foundation.
It's an aggressive claim against fragility. I mean, we live in an era where institutions, relationships, and even our own mental health can feel incredibly brittle.
Very true.
A single crisis can just burn our plans to the ground. This song uses heavy, driving rock to assert that the truest things about our existence are fundamentally fireproof.
It creates a psychological anchor. When everything else is temporary, finding something permanent in the ashes completely changes how you view the fire.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because right in the middle of this massive sonic landscape, the songwriters zoom all the way in.
They get very specific.
Yeah, they shift focus from the grand concept of surviving the fire down to the specific physical imagery of the statue itself. The chorus makes this huge declaration, referring to the Santo Niño as the King of the Islands.
That is a multi-layered claim of sovereignty right there. By specifying the islands, the song acknowledges the unique geography of the Philippines.
Right, an archipelago of thousands of islands.
Exactly, islands that spent centuries navigating colonization and external control. But spiritually, it is a claim of intense, localized intimacy. It tells the listener that the divine isn't some distant, abstract ruler operating from an untouchable throne in a faraway realm.
He's right there.
He is the king of these specific shores.
And the lyrics paint the picture so clearly. They sing, "Standing tall in the silence, holy child, with the world in your hand." The physical statue of the Santo Niño actually depicts Jesus as a young child dressed in royal regalia, casually holding an orb, representing the globe in his left hand.
We have to analyze the cognitive dissonance of that imagery because SPW Worship relies really heavily on it.
Okay, let's hear it.
You have two highly conflicting archetypes merged into one figure here. On one hand, you have a child. A child triggers our psychological instincts for protection, approachability, and innocence. You do not put your guard up around a child.
No, never.
But on the other hand, this child is wearing a crown and holding the entire cosmos in the palm of his hand.
Right, it completely subverts how we usually picture ultimate power. If a king is a massive, imposing adult warrior, you might fear him or feel like too insignificant to approach him.
Exactly.
But a sovereign child, it invites you in while still possessing absolute authority.
It forces a profound trust. Think about the psychological comfort that provides to the listener. If the entire world, with all its chaotic history, its natural disasters, its 1,565 village fires, and its modern complexities, rests safely in the palm of a child's hand.
Then what are we worrying about?
Exactly, then the scale of your personal anxieties drastically shrinks. Your career stress, your family issues, the problems keeping you awake at 2 a.m., they are all held securely in that exact same hand.
It totally reframes the whole 75 BPM anthem. You have this towering, loud stadium rock sound, but it's singing about an incredibly intimate, secure piece.
It's a beautiful contrast.
But pulling a pristine wooden box out of a burned down village is really just day one. It's the shock of survival.
It's the adrenaline phase.
Right. And you can't live in a state of shocked survival forever. Eventually the smoke clears and you have to figure out how to live day to day. And that transition is perfectly mirrored in how SPW Worship completely shifts gears for their next track, Santo Niño, Aming Gabay.
The contrast there is structural. You move from the monumental weight of a historical miracle into the momentum of modern life.
It is a massive vibe shift. We leave the heavy electric guitars and the marching drums behind, and the tempo rockets up.
Way up.
Yeah, we jump straight into an upbeat, high-energy, 120 BPM, modern Christian pop rock track. You suddenly have these bright acoustic guitar rhythms driving the melody. There are catchy, glowing synth lines, tight, bouncy drum grooves, and joyful hand claps layered into the mix.
Notice how the physiological response changes there. We talked about 75 beats per minute feeling like a deliberate awestruck march.
Right.
But 120 beats per minute, that is the tempo of a brisk walk, a light jog, or, an elevated heartbeat during a dance. The music literally compels forward motion.
It makes you want to move.
And the inclusion of hand claps is vital. Hand claps are the universal sonic marker for community. You are no longer alone in the ashes. You are in a crowd moving forward together.
And the lyrics code switch to reflect that everyday intimacy. The song uses Taglish, which is a fluid mix of English and Tagalog.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, they sing, "Salamat Lord sa iyong biyaya, pinupuri ka ng bansang malaya," which translates to, "Thank you, Lord, for your grace, praised by a free nation." The title itself, Aming Gabay, translates to "Our Guide."
It's very conversational.
It strikes me that using Taglish is the ultimate proof that this isn't just some historical relic. Taglish is the language of the streets, the coffee shops, the modern Filipino living their daily life.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this musical and linguistic shift perfectly represents the psychological evolution of a mature faith.
How so?
Well, the first song, Found in the Fire, represents the initial trauma and the miracle of the find, but Santo Niño, Aming Gabay, represents the joy of the journey. It acknowledges that while you might need a savior when your world is burning down, what you need on a Tuesday morning when you're just trying to navigate life is a guide. Aming Gabay.
I have to challenge this artistic choice, though. When reviewing the sources, this genre mashing felt like a massive risk, maybe even a misstep to me.
Really? Why is that?
Well, you have Found in the Fire, which is deeply solemn, dealing with the trauma of losing everything in 1565. And then you have Aming Gabay, which is essentially a bouncy synth-pop track.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Yet, SPW Worship weaves the exact same cultural war cry into the bridge of both songs. They both feature the chant, Viva Señor. Doesn't dropping a 16th century historical battle cry into a modern pop dance track risk cheapening the weight of the original fire? It feels like cognitive dissonance to me.
It would be cognitive dissonance if Viva Señor were merely a historical artifact. But you have to look at the etymology and the lived experience of that phrase in Cebuano culture.
Okay, educate me.
It is a traditional battle cry, yes, but it is deeply dualistic. The word pit is an abbreviation of sengpit, which actually means to call upon, to plead, or to cry out for intervention.
So it's a cry for help.
It is a desperate plea for help. But over centuries of cultural integration, it has simultaneously become the ultimate shout of victory and festival celebration. Viva means long live, so Viva Señor is an acknowledgement of absolute dependence mixed with absolute triumph.
Oh, wow. So it's saying, long live the king who hears our desperate cry.
Precisely. And that is why it serves as the perfect architectural bridge between two completely different musical genres. It is the connective tissue.
I get it now.
When the heavy drums are building and found in the fire, and you're standing in the smoking ruins shouting, Viva Señor, is an act of fierce defiance. It is elevating God above the tragedy. You are declaring that the fire does not have the final word.
And when you are in the 120 BPM pop song, dancing with hand claps and synths,
you shout the exact same phrase to declare that God is the source of your everyday joy. The external circumstances have completely shifted, right? From the ashes of a village to the celebration of a free nation, but the core battle cry remains identical.
That's incredibly powerful.
It proves to the listener that their spiritual anchor is immutable. The ship might be weathering a hurricane or sailing on calm waters, but the anchor holds fast regardless.
That reframes the pop track completely for me. The joy isn't superficial, it's earned. It's the joy of someone who survived the fire and actually lived to dance about it.
Yes.
Which brings us to the most crucial part of these sources, the real-world application. The source material outlines a concept they call fireproof worship. Because, let's be honest, it's easy to analyze 16th century history and modern pop beats. It's much harder to apply it when your own life feels like it's in ashes.
This raises an important question. How do you, the listener, apply the principle of Kaplag when you are navigating your own personal burnout?
Yeah, the everyday fires.
Whether you are a creative whose well has run dry, an entrepreneur whose project just collapsed, or someone facing intense personal criticism, those are the modern fires. They consume our energy and leave us feeling completely charred.
Going back to my black box analogy from earlier, The flight recorder only survives the crash because the titanium casing takes the brunt of the heat and the impact. The data inside survives because the box around it holds firm.
Right.
If we're supposed to survive modern burnout, what is our protective casing?
The source material addresses this through a coaching concept called the intact base. In 1565, the Santo Niño didn't survive the flames through thin air. It was physically sheltered by the wooden box. The wood took the ambient heat.
It is the buffer.
Exactly.
Right.
For anyone navigating the intense flames of modern life, your intact base consists of your non-negotiable spiritual and mental boundaries. Specifically, the sources point to the disciplines of the word and prayer.
Those are the titanium layers of our modern black box.
Exactly. When external pressures mount, when the criticism gets deafening, or the anxiety of daily life feels like a consuming fire, you cannot rely on your own emotional resilience to survive the heat.
Because that burns up fast.
Emotional resilience burns up incredibly quickly. You have to retreat into the intact base. You maintain those foundational practices so that your inner spiritual core remains completely insulated and untouched by the chaos outside.
And what I find so compelling about this coaching advice is that it doesn't tell the listener to magically put out the fire.
No, not at all.
In fact, it suggests a profound shift in perspective. Maybe we shouldn't be so terrified of the flames.
That is perhaps the most challenging yet liberating takeaway from the Kaplag narrative. Human instinct dictates that we avoid the fire at all costs. But the principle embedded in these songs suggests that the fire is a revealing mechanism.
Like a refiner's fire.
Think about the village in 1565. If the fire had never swept through, that wooden box would have remained just another object in just another house. It would have blended in with the scenery.
Wow, yeah.
It was only because the fire burned away everything fragile, everything temporary, and everything extraneous that the indestructible treasure could finally be seen clearly.
The devastation created the necessary contrast for the miracle.
Precisely. You don't ask for the fire, but when it comes, you recognize it as a force that clarifies what is truly fireproof in your life.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a massive expanse of time and sound today. We started by standing in the choking smoke and radiating heat of a destroyed village, witnessing the impossible discovery of the Santo Niño.
A truly impossible moment.
We explored how SPW Worship translated that heavy, awe-inspiring silence into the sweeping 75 BPM stadium rock anthem of Found in the Fire. We unpacked the profound psychological comfort of a sovereign child, approachable yet omnipotent, holding our chaotic world and our deepest anxieties safely in his hand.
And we didn't stop in the ashes. We tracked the evolution of faith from the initial trauma of survival into the brisk 120 BPM forward momentum of Santo Niño, Aming Gabay.
The joy of the journey.
We saw how Taglish bridges the gap between historical reverence and modern, everyday lived experience.
And weaving through it all, connecting the solemn weeping to the joyful dancing, is that dual-purpose battle cry, Viva, a reminder that whether we are mourning a loss or celebrating a victory, the anchor holds. The Santo Niño isn't just a wooden artifact sealed behind museum glass. Through the architecture of these songs, he is presented as the king of every heart, deeply relevant to the mechanics of our modern survival.
There's one specific lyric from Aming Gabay that perfectly encapsulates the emotional arc of this deep dive. They sing that he wiped away our nation's tears.
That's a beautiful line.
When you internalize the scale of that statement, it offers immense comfort. The history of the Philippines over the last 500 years is fraught with colonization, war, and natural disasters. If that sovereign presence, that guide, has the infinite capacity and tenderness to wipe away the accumulated tears of an entire nation across centuries,
then he can handle our problems.
he unequivocally has the capacity to handle whatever personal fire you are walking through today.
It scales down perfectly to the individual. If you haven't yet, you absolutely need to listen to these tracks to feel that shift yourself. Head over to the SPW Worship channel, put on some good headphones, start with the atmospheric heavy build of Found in the Fire, and then immediately chase it with the bright rhythmic pop of Santo Niño, Aming Gabay.
Let the tempo shift pull you physically from the ashes of 1565 into the vibrant reality of today.
Let the music prove to your nervous system that you can survive the heat.
Absolutely.
But before we let you go, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over. We began this journey looking at an image of absolute destruction, a village reduced to gray soot. But the entire spiritual trajectory of a nation was altered because one person had the courage to stop, kneel down in the dirt, and carefully sift through the devastating ruins of what they had lost.
It takes courage to look at the ruins.
It really does. So, what hidden indestructible treasures might you uncover if you finally decide to stop running, turn around, and look closely at the ashes of your own past failures or burned out dreams?